Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. Let's start this DRC meeting. I am Christina Sorrento. I am the Chief of Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Preston Place and Lake Apartments. Your lead reviewer is Adam Bossi and Grace Bogdan. Co-leading, yes. The purpose of this meeting is really for the applicant to ask any questions that you might have. And based upon the comments you received, I'm going to ask Grace and Adam to kind of highlight some of the major issues with this, that we should discuss today. Otherwise, I'm going to really turn it over to the applicant. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed. So Adam and Grace.
Sure. Away, Grace.
Thanks, I'll start. You received a lot of comments, and I just want to touch quickly on design, environmental, and transportation before we hand it off to you guys. And so in terms of design, there were several comments from both Adam, myself, and Atul Sharma, who is now with the director's office. And these comments are really geared towards the overall design, layout, and open space within the site. And what we had observed are that the open spaces that are being proposed are really isolated and segmented throughout the site, and our recommendations are really geared towards relocating these in a way that makes the spaces more central and better connected to the surrounding area. And so in the plan that looks like on the western side, there's an open space proposed at the southeastern portion, and we're recommending to relocate that to the central area where the open space is currently proposed, and then making it a sort of north-south connection from Manor Road down to the CCT. And then on the eastern side, what that would look like, the proposed open space there really is central to the site, but we're actually suggesting to move that more eastward so it would better connect to the north-south bike ped connection that is master plan and proposed, and we fully support that. And so essentially, when we look at this entire site, including the Muse connection that you guys are proposing in the middle, what we're trying to get is a well-connected open space amenity for not only the residents of this plan, but the surrounding area. And that really aligns with some of the goals that are within the Chevy Chase Lake sector plan itself. And then with the unit layout, we would hope that you could look at reorienting the units along those open space features so it better activates that area and improves the architecture along that and the relationship between the units and the open space. And then in terms of the concept that you had submitted to us, not in e-plans, but through email for the Muse property, we really appreciate the inclusion, and we look forward to working with you more in bringing that conceptual level forward. But we are still looking into exactly how that fits into this process, and so we'll get back to you to see what exactly would be required for that. And then along with those design comments, Atul was great. And he was so helpful to provide an exhibit that really visualizes what we're speaking about, and we sent those comments to you along with the other e-plans comments on Friday. And so our hope is that if you could look at those comments in whole, along with some related comments that I'm going to get into for environmental and transportation, and we think having a design meeting prior to the next resubmittal would be very helpful, so we can all get together and talk about that. In terms of environmental comments, Marco is not here today, but he did have several comments in regards to the variance. It looks like there's missing information in terms of missing trees and missing impacts to specimen trees, and an overall lack of justification for some of the tree removal proposed by the Stream Valley buffer on the eastern portion of the site. And some of the proposed mitigation for that tree removal isn't canopy, and it's required to be canopy. And that actually goes along with one of the sector plan goals to maximize canopy cover throughout the site. So our hope is that if we can redesign this open space in a better way, it would be better able to achieve that maximum canopy cover. And then also another Chevy Chase Lake sector plan recommendation or requirement is environmental enhancement. All new redevelopment should propose some sort of environmental enhancement to Coquitlam Run. We didn't see that in the submittal, and so Marco did provide some opportunities that he saw that would be worth exploring. And then in terms of transportation, there are several suggestions for intraparcel connections. And then also we're asking you to explore the feasibility of closing the most eastern road proposed along Manor Road, or eastern entrance to the site. Thank you. Where the cursor is being shown. And we would like you to work closely with Marie to see how that would work in terms of if the radii would work within the site. And then general comment, internal streets must be designed to public standard, and we're referring to the Complete Streets Design Guideline. And we want to make sure that the tree panels in the internal streets are expanded to a size that will sufficiently support larger street trees. And then also we are looking to have a double row of trees along Manor Road if possible. And another sector plan recommendation is to have those utilities underground along Manor Road. So we are looking for that in the next resubmittal. And then I think the last one is the crosswalk that's being shown currently with sort of in the middle of the site. We are asking that to be relocated westward to the proposed Road A entrance at Manor Road. And so those are some of the major comments. We did receive agency comments from DHCA, DPS, DOT, Fire, and Stormwater, but we are going to go ahead and turn it over to you guys for conversation.
Thank you, Grace. Pat Harris with Turley and Brewer, and with me is Jeff Driscoll of Tool Brothers, and then Josh Sloan of VICA, and I think some of Josh and maybe Jeff's colleagues are on the line as well. So thanks for the comments, and we appreciate that. What your hit list was not dissimilar from our hit list, frankly, and your additional description and explanation is helpful. Let me first start out by an easy one, which is we're changing the name of the project to Chevy Chase Crossing. So we'll change all the plan names. So moving forward, this is Chevy Chase Crossing. In terms of the revised layout, and we obviously are going to need a little bit more time to evaluate that, but we agree with you that sort of first step here is we need to sit down with you guys and really talk about that. While we understand the objectives, we're hoping that there's a way that this can be achieved without what we're perceiving as a loss of 10 units, which is very significant. I mean, this project, as you know, isn't maximizing the allowable density. And so to further eliminate 10 units at a location which is on a transit site is significant. And you know, what may make sense in plan view and you know, that centrally located green area on the lake piece isn't necessarily what is needed when things are actually on the ground. And again, so we think that there's a way to achieve this without having to lose that many units. I'd also note that, you know, it seemed like a driving force behind the revised design was the recommendation, which really, it doesn't apply to this site. It was a recommendation for the Chevy Chase Lake, I think it was Parcel A site, the Bazzuto project, where there numerous times they talked about centrally located open space. But that project's at Main and Main and really sort of weaves into the overall area. These two sites, by virtue not of our project, but because of the surrounding area, are sort of isolated sites. I mean, the grades, you know, a combination of the grades, the development on either side of them, and the purple line have made them somewhat internal type sites. So again, we're hoping that we can figure out a way to make the design work without losing 10 units. In terms of the architectural comments, we've sent those to our architect, and I think we understand what your objectives are, and I think a good many of those we'll be able to respond to in a way that I think you'll be satisfied with. In terms of the undergrounding, you know, we took a look at the master plan. We took a look at the complete streets. I'd note that the complete streets notes that on a street such as Manor, undergrounding is optional. The master plan required undergrounding only for the Chevy Chase Lake Block A site, not further to the east. And then ironically, the despite that master plan recommendation, because of various constraints and costs, they did not underground. And it's the same, for the same reasons that they, with a much denser project, determined that it was just infeasible, and obviously the planning board agreed to underground. We have the same constraints and issues here. So I think that's going to be a really difficult one that we're going to have further discussion on. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh, who I think is going to hit on a number of the other ones. But I will say that I do think, and maybe we can get it scheduled within the next 2 weeks. I think we need about 2 weeks' time to start to really evaluate your recommendations. And if we can get a meeting set up within that time frame to meet with your design team, that would be helpful. Josh?
Thanks, Pat. Yeah. I just want to say, our intent isn't for you to lose 10 units. I think, we want to work with you to figure out, we sort of showed in that visual where you could make up some units. And so, I think we just need to sit down and look at where we could connect the open space better where we can. But also just the comment about the Chevy Chase Lake sector plan for open space. I think, this site wasn't contemplated for redevelopment in the sector plan. And so there was really no specific design principles for here. But the central open space and connecting it to the surrounding area, that's generally a good design principle. And so we would like to apply it here as best. And same for the undergrounding utilities. The sector plan does say Manor Road should be a great pedestrian experience. And to do that, we want to see the utilities undergrounded. And, Chevy Chase Lake made a justification for not undergrounding their utilities, but we did see them undergrounded in the EYA development to the south and the Crescent to the west on the other side of Connecticut. So we want to see that explored further.
We can explore it further, and as you know, a lot of it depends on what those lines actually are, because that really dictates cost. So,
right.
And obviously, if we end up losing units, everything I said, it becomes even more so in terms of you have fewer units to bear a significant cost. So we'll delve into that more as well. Josh?
Morning, everyone. So let's try to get you guys back on schedule. We don't have a lot of time left for right now, and a lot of these things are going to be interrelated as we start shifting things. But a couple things that Pat kind of alluded to, we want to just kind of put out on the table. We've got a 30-foot fall across the Lake Apartments site and a 22-foot fall across the Preston site, which is on the right, on the east. So a lot of our layout and connectivity, open space decisions were made based on creating an accessible set of open spaces, sidewalk connections and trail connections where we could. We also have the constraints of where the noise wall is for the purple line versus where retaining wall is and where we can make connections. And then there are easements, there are existing WSSE easements where some of the shifts that you recommended are made that we just can't do. But we are going to start exploring things over the next couple of weeks. One of the things that we definitely wanted to talk about is the trail on the far east side. Most of the Stream Valley buffer impacts that we have are, for one, removing existing infrastructure that's there. There are buildings and patios and fences and walls and things in the Stream Valley buffer now. We're removing all those so that we don't have any units in the Stream Valley buffer. But of course, the trail itself, to grade that and make sure that that is an accessible trail connection from Manor to the Purple Line, requires significant grading. We thought it was much better to put it up onto our site rather than keep it in the Cochran Parkway because of the much more deleterious impacts putting it next to the stream. So, our thought is get it away from the stream as far as we can, but we need to grade it and provide some amenities along the trail to activate it and make sure that it's used and well taken care of by the community. But that said, we have to grade in the Stream Valley buffer to create that, and whether it's further down in the parkway right of way or on our site, I mean, we're not ambivalent about it. We like it where it is. We think it connects better to the community. It's safer and provides a really good amenity with better environmental outcome. So that's a key thing. We do know that there's a comment about a future connection to an underpass that would allow this to continue to the south that needs to be designed, and maybe some conservation area set aside, even if it's not built. That's something that we definitely need to catch up with Katie about to understand what that will look like. I guess the one thing that we would like to explore based on the grading, the noise wall, is rather than doing the north-south connection on the lake apartments through our central open space, we're looking at reconfiguring and, potentially, hopefully not losing a unit, but doing that on the east side of the lake apartment side, which is along the Muse property, is the one in between us. Exactly, thank you. That's an area with a lot of easements, so we have to work around them, a lot of utilities, a lot of grade, but it may provide a nice staggered set of north-south connections where we have the east side of Lake Apartments, we have the east side of Preston Place, east side of Lake Apartments, and then you have the public road through, well, the private road with a public easement through Bizzuto's project. And it staggers them evenly, so we have connections to the trail and open spaces. As you noted, the open spaces, some of them are a little bit more private, and these are common open space, not public open space, and that was done for a reason. We want some neighborhood gathering spaces that are a little bit more focused on neighborhood gatherings and don't have necessarily public traffic through them. So that's why I think maybe some more direct north-south connections that are tied to the trail connections would be better. Our discussion with the Muse will catch up with you on how that will work technically with filings and things. That connection is kind of contingent on their comfort level with safety and numbers of people through there. So it's something that we do want to make feel a little bit more neighborhood oriented rather than, and just a second leg of the Capitol Crescent Trail. So that's just something to keep in mind so that we can keep that as a viable option with our overall connectivity.
Josh, I hear what you're saying for the connection. And my only request there is that when we had been looking into that site, we couldn't find any regulatory approvals for the Muse or any SCP that was done. So if in your research you find something, can you please share it with us? Because we're struggling to find anything, and that's sort of where we're, still looking to see what the process is going to be moving forward. So. Yeah,
I think you're right. We didn't find anything either. It's an R30 site. It's an old zone. I think they got a building permit and a plat, or reverse that order, plat and a building permit. So we'll keep looking. They didn't have anything in their records either, but we'll look at land records or something if we can. I guess the last thing, since I've got about 5 minutes, is the central streets. We put our mitigation. We put our mitigation trees around the open spaces and outside. We actually did a mitigation exhibit that showed our trees were at least 5 feet from structures and easements, and provided the soil volume calculation. So that's something I want to catch up with Marco on. I don't know that he saw that we submitted that in support of the mitigation for the variance trees. But we actually put our street trees internal where they had better soil volume. But your recommendation, one of them I think, is to shorten the driveways. And we can shorten the driveways, add that space to the tree panels and move those trees onto the other side. We weren't counting them for mitigation anyway, but that will give them a significant amount of soil volume. But that would be an 18-foot driveway rather than 20 feet. So I want to make sure that, a lot of times we get a comment from DPS. And so Sam needs to be part of this conversation about a 20-foot driveway parking space rather than 18. We're happy to shorten it up.
Josh, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Are you counting that for the required parking spaces for each of the units? Because when I looked at it,
Yeah.
there were 2 car garages inside each unit. So essentially what you're proposing is 4 parking spaces per townhouse, which we think are quite excessive. And we understand that you need guest parking and things like that, but we are really looking to minimize the on-site parking spaces and limit them to 2 because of several reasons. One, there's just four spaces per unit right next to transit seems excessive. 2, a lot of times, as you know, people will park outside and they hang their cars out in the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk is interrupted. And it creates a lot of conflicts in people coming in and out of townhouses and people walking, pushing strollers, being in a wheelchair in the sidewalk. So that's where I think our comments are coming from, a combination of goals here. So we just want to be clear about that. And I just want to reiterate something that Grace said earlier, that we are not looking here to cut down your unit count. So we'll work with you on reorganization of things. But we do want to make sure that the open spaces are really sort of connected and sort of flow from one to the other, and that we are having a development where units are creating fronts onto these open spaces and not having backs and sides. A lot of the site constraints are actually not in the application, so we are not fully able to comment on them. Things like site walls versus sound walls and topography. So when we meet next, we highly urge you to come with those constraints so we can have an informed discussion around that.
Okay. All right, we'll make sure that those things are clearer than they are now.
Let me ask Sam. Sam's on here. Sam, do you have any comments right now about the change from 20 feet to 18 feet of the driveways?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Well, in this development, I think we have private roads, so defer to park and planning for the space we would require. If that was a public road setting, we would have needed at least 20 feet. Because as Atul mentioned, I mean, in a lot of cases, although we have ample parking space for each townhouse and garages, people do park outside. And by doing so, the cars hang over the sidewalk and will make an interrupted setting for anybody that uses the sidewalk.
If I could make a comment, this is Atik. I think we walked the job site. It was not this particular one, but Robert remembers this. There was a joint effort by DPS, DOT, and Park and Planning that there was a minimum driveway spacing that it was required. I think it was 20 feet. If we reduce it to 18, and there will be overhang over the sidewalk. But Sam is right. We defer to Park and Planning because it's a private road.
Yeah, Teague, this is Robert. We walked the Grosvenor Heights site, the EYA site, and King Farm. And I think, when we were looking at that, clearly that was for public roads and separation from, overhanging into public sidewalks. So I think the team is trying to figure out how they can address that with a private road setting. But yeah, we did walk the 2 sites and felt like there was some good aspects of both.
I know you've got a 10 o'clock on this also. One of the things that we've done on certain projects is we've made it part of the HOA documents that you can get towed if you park, impede sidewalks or whatever else. So we'll look at a solution for that. One of the major comments we had several community meetings with our direct neighbors. We had meetings with the people across from us. Was, well, like you always hear, Manor Road is their road, and they don't like other people parking on it. So that's something that if we go that route, we just want to make sure we have your backing, and can find a solution for this.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, I will say, I mean, we have had a number of meetings with the Chevy Chase Muse folks, and obviously the very first meeting, they weren't very pleased with the development because no one's ever pleased with new development next door to them. But Josh and Jeff in particular have worked really hard to try to get them comfortable with this, and I think we're in a pretty good place. So I would hate, with respect to any of these things, to do something that they feel that we did a bait and switch with them. So we are sensitive to the concerns they have expressed to us as well.
Right,
I think it may be helpful, and I don't know, Jeff and Josh, if you agree with this, but when we have our meeting in 2 weeks, if everyone's comfortable doing an in-person meeting, that may be more productive. If staff, if you think that will work as well.
I think so, yeah. I know we're running short on time. Did you guys have any other comments before we turn it to Adam for schedule?
No, we'll hold stuff for our next meeting.
All right, so just to wrap it up then, these dates relate to both the preliminary plan and the site plan. Your first resubmission date is June 22nd. The final resubmission date is July 12th. Agency letters are due on August 1st. The staff report is due to post on September 5th, and that is all in preparation for a September 15th planning board hearing. And Grace or I will follow up with you to get that meeting scheduled.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check our schedules, Adam, and then I'll reach out to both of you and we can coordinate that.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you
For your comments.
Thank you all.
See y'all.
Thank you. PRC meeting for Federal Plaza West. My name is Christina Sorrento. I am the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division. And your lead reviewer for this item is Amy Lindsay. The purpose of this meeting is for the applicant to ask any questions you might have based upon the comments that you received last week. And I'm going to ask Amy first to kind of highlight any of the major issues we should talk about and then turn it over to the applicant. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. First, I'd like to say that we're really pleased to see the addition of the bike path on East Jefferson and the open space location. And we look forward to seeing the evolution of this plan as we move forward. I did want to highlight sort of 5 issues that we think need to be addressed. The first is the removal of the center vehicular entrance. Montgomery County Code, and I did provide the code citation, limits the number of curb cuts you can have along your frontage to 2 in this case. So we believe that as a vehicular entrance, this needs to be eliminated, but we do really like the way this would work as a pedestrian plaza. We think that's a really great addition to the area. The second major issue is the master plan calls for a street along this edge right here. So that would be the southern curb cut. Now, it doesn't say whether it's a public or private street, but either way, this needs to be set up to work in the interim. But it does need to be set up to become an east-west connection in the future, and that is in the master plan. And so that might mean things like we understand that this is basically providing loading to the existing retail and commercial areas. That's fine in the interim, but we shouldn't be setting up additional loading on this area, or at least be looking at it very carefully. The third issue is this north-south drive aisle. Figuring out a way, I understand you're working with an existing building, but straightening this drive aisle so that it, doesn't have this big swing out. Another issue that we feel very strongly about is the addition of streetscape along all of your vehicular access paths. So that would mean including green panels, having that buffer between vehicular traffic and the pedestrians on all of these vehicular paths. And that really plays into the 5th idea, which is the focus on the pedestrian realm and pedestrian connections and safety. We know this is an area where we have a lot of walkers. You have a development right across the street. People are concerned about how to get across East Jefferson, how to connect to the site from the development just to the south. And even there's no way for a pedestrian to get from West Jefferson to East, area, right? So there's no way to get from Federal Plaza West to Federal Plaza East. So we think that's a real issue, and that there needs to be that as a focus. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Pat Harris with Larch Hurley, and we have our development team here, including Jeff Sharp from Federal Realty. So it's interesting that of your 5 issues are all related to the roadway network. And when we were reviewing the comments, we realized if we can solve this roadway network, we've pretty much addressed the issue. So we agree with what the items to be resolved are. I want to start with noting something that Amy mentioned, and that is that this to some extent is an interim plan because we have this existing shopping center immediately to our east, and we have an existing building that, while situated on our property, is very, it opens up to the shopping center to the east. And so we don't have a blank canvas here. And so we recognize if we were dealing with a blank canvas, things like the east-west connections would be different, that existing building, the north-south building, likely wouldn't be there, and things would look a little different. And so what we're trying to do is solve for an interim condition and not preclude when and if the eastern portion redevelops, that then we are addressing all of those issues and providing them in a way that you would if you weren't dealing with those initial constraints. The other constraint that's going on because of that is there are more than 70 leases that are existing and are moving into, and will be there for quite a long time. And those leases have parking obligations and other things. And so we have to be mindful of that too. And that has played a large part in what our ultimate design is. Let me turn now to the more specific items. The first is this center driveway, which we believe is very important. And we believe it's very important because without that center driveway, this property really doesn't have a main entrance. I mean, in our view, and there's a hierarchy of roads here, that's the entrance to the project. The rest of these things, at least in the interim, are more back of house operational type access ways. We also, and I've looked at the code probably 5 times since we initially heard the comment that, well, there's only 2 entrances permitted, but I do not read the code that way. It says for every 2 driveways every 300 feet. And simply by doing the math there, you see that 3 driveways are permitted. We are reducing the number of driveways, however, from the 4 down to the 3. So I think when, obviously, we want a follow-up meeting with you to discuss these items, but I think that's going to be sort of front and center because what happens to that driveway is really important. It's going to dictate a lot of these other items. I would also mention eliminating that as a driveway. We've sort of doubled our open space, and this section of the property is already really providing what the master plan requires with the green space that we showed. These, in terms of the southern road, it's an interim condition in 2 respects. One is it's an interim condition because of the existing shopping center to the east, but it's also an interim condition because of the property to the south. I mean, the master plan certainly doesn't indicate that this entire east-west southern driveway, which we agree with you, that ultimately it wants to be either, we would believe, a private road, but nonetheless a road developed to the county standards, but the burden is not on this property to provide that entire roadway. And so what we're trying, and however, we have designed it that it definitely is bearing the majority of the burden of the section. But what we're trying to do is design it in a way that it can function as needed, recognizing that when the southern piece redevelops, that they would then provide the additional portion of the right of way on their property. So I think there's going to need to be a little bit more discussion on that. A question for staff, and maybe this is for you, Amy. We noticed that there were no environmental comments provided, and I didn't know whether you're not the person reviewing them or if somehow those just weren't uploaded.
I am the person reviewing them.
Okay.
Just at sketch plan, I think I did make a comment basically saying that at time of preliminary plan that the forest conservation would be reviewed there. But
Okay.
its sketch plan, I mean, I can say, gosh, doesn't look like there's room, does this fit all the stormwater management, or there isn't just a whole lot to say because the
Okay.
devil is in the details.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing something, but okay, thanks for that clarification. DOT had a couple comments regarding the East Jefferson section and the road diet. And first of all, I want to note that I think there was a misunderstanding on their part saying that we were within the red policy area. In fact, this is an orange policy area. And the master plan of highways specifically calls for 2 lanes, not 4 lanes. So I want to make sure, we had met with some from DOT, and I think Rebecca Torman, I think Brenda was involved in that meeting, but there was a favorable response to how East Jefferson is shaping up, and I want to make sure that there are no issues with DOT with respect to East Jefferson. Go ahead.
This is Deepak here.
Okay.
Yes, there is a road diet for the sector plan, so we are good with the road diet, but there are some items which need to be coordinated, like the floating bus stop,
Right.
And stuff which is already in the commons. So
Okay, I was concerned in reading them that maybe that you weren't on board with it, and I was concerned about that, but okay. That sounds good.
Hey, Pat,
Yes.
can I ask just one question on that? Because one of the comments was to shift that buffer over to be a 6-foot buffer along East Jefferson in the comments.
yes,
And we're just wondering, so, that works for the majority of the road. However, there is an existing hawk signal that's just off the page here. And so our proposal, where there's an existing concrete center island and everything for the infrastructure on that. And so we would want to taper it back down to get through there, and just putting that out there, that we're going to look at that 6-foot buffer, but.
yeah. So that's something which you have to work on and show me how the transition is going to work. So.
Okay, cool. We'll work on that. Thank you.
I think Deepak brings up an excellent point, transitions. This plan kind of cuts off. It's actually where you see the signature block. We are going to need to work on how this will transition into what the city of Rockville has planned. And I've got some dates for a meeting with the city of Rockville already set up, potential dates, which I'll email you, Pat, so we can coordinate with them and make certain that this cross section and the bikeway will work with what the city of Rockville is doing.
That's really helpful,
also-
Amy. And in fact, I was going to say that was going to be the next item I was going to touch on. We actually, and I don't know if you're aware of this, we did have a meeting with them. And to some extent, I feel like it's like this. They have a certain idea of what they think should occur. And it's very different from what the county thinks should occur, which we have embraced, as you know. And I think all of us believe that the solution is a really good one. So that's just a little bit of a heads up that they feel very differently about this. So I think what we should probably do, we don't need to do it now, but before the meeting with the city of Rockville, I think it would be helpful for us to have just a brief meeting with you to brief you on where they're coming from. Because, and part of it was, I'm not so sure they really understood our report and some of the issues, but we have now, I believe, Will, you forwarded them our application, right?
Well, so I requested, I don't know that they received it, so we're going to forward them the materials because I don't know if it got distributed. But Amy, just to point out one thing, you may not have seen it, but so this plan just shows the sort of the site, the site itself and the frontage. We have a full plan included with the LATR study that goes all the way down to where we're proposing to terminate the bike lanes, excuse me, down to the south, and then also shows how we're proposing to take it all the way to Rollins. So we do have some sort of preliminary concept transitions in there. They're just not shown on this plan that's on the screen right here, but they are in there's a larger excerpt in the, or sorry, a larger plan in the LATR study.
Wonderful. I will go look for it. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think the final comment I would make, and then if anyone else on our team has any comments, turn it over to them. The north-south drive that's in between the proposed new building and the existing building, while in plan view, it looks like that's part of our vehicular pedestrian primary circulation system. That is really intended at this point as more of a service road. And so I think some of the comments that were provided with respect to this in terms of straightening it out and such, we're hopeful that we can make it work based on this alignment that we're showing. But again, when we meet with you, we can go into that with more detail. Brad or Jeff or anyone else on the team, anything else we should add?
Not for me, thank you.
I'm good too, Pat.
Will?
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Brian? Amy, do you have a sense of when the meeting with the city of Rockville is? Because we want to, obviously that's an important meeting. And then what we want to do is schedule another meeting with you and your team to discuss the other issues, which again, are primarily the internal road system.
Sure. I've got dates of June 13th at 11, June 14th. Now, I have not checked our internal. I've just basically asked City of Rockville for some times and dates. Okay. So the 13th, the 14th, or the 15th.
Okay.
I mean,
if you can shoot me the times. Okay. And then is DOT going to be at that meeting as well? I think they should be.
Oh, absolutely. Not. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think everyone needs to be on the same page.
Yes, agreed. Okay. Okay. And then I will follow up with you to try to get another meeting on the books or issues pertaining specifically to the site. But we're excited about this project. I mean, I think it's going to, it's going to transform that portion of East Jefferson, which certainly needs, no offense, Jeff, a little help. So
we're on board.
Yeah. Great. Well, we would definitely look forward. We definitely look forward to it, and we recognize the challenges of, you've got an existing center that you are trying to work with. So we do recognize that, but we want to make certain that we're meeting all of sort of the requirements so that we're setting things up for not just the interim, but also the long term.
Absolutely.
And apparently I was wrong, and I truly apologize about this. The Forest Conservation Plan is required now. So that has definitely been a change, and I will go back and check that.
Let me just jump in there. The Forest Conservation Plan was uploaded with the prelim plan. So if you want to look for it there, it's with that. And also the documents that Will was referencing, they're in the LATR, but they're also in the prelim plan submission. So that may save you some time if you're looking for the overall transition plans for the documents.
Oh, you mean sketch plan?
We filed, you know what, and I was getting my cases confused when you said, well, you just filed a sketch plan. I forgot that, in fact, here we've filed both.
Yeah.
Okay, let me check on that.
Do you want the number?
That would be great.
Yes, we have the number. We have the number. It's 120220140. And the Forest Conservation Plan should probably be with the sketch plan also, and you should probably move the file into that one as well. So just to make sure it's there, it should be with the first one.
Okay, we can definitely do that when we re-upload in response to these comments. Pat, do you want to talk about timing a little bit?
Sure, but I think we need to hear their schedule, no? Is that what you meant?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. Next steps.
Amy, per the standard, can you give us the dates, assuming that everything worked like clockwork?
Yes, let me pull that up because I was just looking at that earlier this morning because the having to do with the break.
I assume the date, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just at an earlier DRC. Are the dates exactly the same?
They should be. So we're looking at a planning board date of, let's see, should be the 15th of September.
Right. So what I was provided, if it's easier for you to just, for me to, resubmission June 12th, final submission July 12th, agency letters August 1st, staff reports September 5th, planning board September 15th.
Actually, I've got June 22nd as the resubmit date.
Yeah, did I not say that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said the 12th. Yeah, so that's why we wanted to get the meeting with the city of Rockville as quickly as possible.
Yes, we appreciate that. Given that so now that we know that the preliminary forest conservation plan is required, was provided, will you be able to provide any comments that you have fairly in short order?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that would be helpful.
All right, anything else?
Not from our end. We look forward to working with you guys on this.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
you.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.